Protect your privacy and your freedom. Use a VPN. Discount code for NordVPN in the description below with a 30-day money-back guarantee.
Here we go. Let's talk about the politics of the lockdown and whether to lock down or not lock down, because Japan and Sweden haven't locked down. Is it necessary? Is it essential?
Okay, so Sweden didn't lock down. And then everyone flew to Sweden on vacation now to go to the spas and go out to the restaurants. So it's the Swedish economy, all the tourism in Europe, people are going on coronavirus vacations to Sweden because it's the only country not locked down. And they didn't have any more deaths than anyone else. And the media lied and said that India locked down, and they waited until the virus was already done. And then they locked everyone in their house afterwards. After there was all the people who were going to die already died. So after the virus is... it's just, it's insanity. I personally think like these hedge fund managers are just like fucking screwing with the economy, and they're buying shorts and then calling their friends, you gotta lock down, everyone's gonna die, and then they're like, I'll give you a kickback, I'll give you a cut, just crash the economy,
investing in 3M,
like crash it for a week, then you can uncrash it. I need a new Lambo. Like, can you imagine how much money these people with like these 50x derivative positions before they put in the lockdowns? Yeah. Can you imagine how much money they're making? Like how many $100 billion they're making on these trading positions? The Brazilian president, they were 100% certain they were going to do lockdown. All these traders took their positions. Then the Brazilian president fired the health advisor and said, we're not doing this. And then they tried to do a military coup and overthrow the president to get rid of him because he wasn't going to do lockdown, and they lost a shitload of money on their stock positions.
Wow.
Like he came out publicly and said that they were trying to overthrow him. The Secret Service came and did a briefing about they were getting a military coup because he wasn't going to impose lockdown. And all these, it's a scam. It's a scam.
Wow. Okay. Anything else you want to say about this?
Yeah. So basically, this has been coming for a while, and the coronavirus is only the first phase. Right. The second phase is in September and August, which is when I thought there were going to be 25 million people unemployed in the U.S. They hit 50 million people in 2 months. Yes. It took 2.5 years for them to hit that level in the Great Depression. So we're in economic devastation. It's bigger than anything we've had in the last 120 years. It's like the beginning of World War I when Roosevelt was coming in, and stuff like that. The economy is
in the second phase.
So right now, 50%. The stock market, the economy is shit, and the stock market is going up, right? Because the Fed's printing money. So the financial system is decoupled from the real economy. First of all. There's no relationship between the stock market or sales or income or economic activity and the stock market. The banks are decoupled now from the real economy. So this is really dangerous. The real estate market is decoupled from the real economy. So first of all, anyone who has Airbnb vacation rentals is going under, and they're going to tank the real estate. It's going to cause a bunch of defaults in the real estate market because they're making a lot of money. Everyone with debt is going to get destroyed. Half of the Fortune 500, half the publicly traded companies are losing money now. 50% of them. So their stocks are being pumped by the Fed, but they're losing money. Mm-hmm. And they have massive amounts of debt. So what we're going to see is these people are unemployed. They're going to cut their consumption. That's going to start hitting these publicly traded companies. They're going to not be able to make debt payments. They're going to go. The weaker companies are going to go under. Anyone with debt is going to go under. So this is going to be really traumatic. And that's the second phase, is August and December. Then we're going to have a third phase. And basically, we know mathematically the debt can't be paid off. They have 4 times more debt than they have money. Yep. They don't even have enough. There's no way that debt can be paid off. They have to default. So the question is, how are they going to default and when? And I have the opinion that the banks aren't going to let these people write off their mortgages and credit cards, and they need some method to get rid of this debt. But the people who own the debt aren't going to let them just like get out of their $500,000 student loan debt. The good thing they should do is just print up a few trillion and buy out all the mortgages and credit cards and student loan debt, and just wipe out the consumer debt and knock out and let the corporate debt default and start funding small businesses and things like that. But they're not going to do that. I know they're not going to do that. I think what they're going to do, there's stuff happening in the background right now that isn't public. For instance, the U.S. government, some of it's public, I can talk about, some of it I can't talk about. The U.S. government is paying companies to move their factories back from Asia to the United States. Japan is paying the Japanese companies to move their factories from the United States and Mexico back to Japan. So in the big picture, the TPP failed. The U.S. government said, only trade with us, don't trade with China, and U.S. was going to be the biggest trading partner. But these countries did not sign the TPP because they have more trade with China and Chinese allied countries than they did with the U.S. The U.S. was really a small market for them, so they weren't going to sacrifice their trade with China, which is 1 billion people, it's a huge market, just to keep the U.S. happy, right? So the Asian countries, the Philippines, Taiwan, Thailand, they did not agree to an exclusive trade deal with the U.S. that would have excluded China. So they pulled out of that. So what they did was Trump said we're going to renegotiate NAFTA, and Trump created this new NAFTA that basically merges Canada, Mexico, and the United States. Now they're paying the companies to move their factory back to the United States, and they're bringing the factories back from Asia. And what this means is the labor cost has to be as cheap as what they were getting in Asia, or they won't move the factories back. So we have 50 million unemployed, and that's going to lower their labor costs a little bit, right? So, and they're going to have some inflation, and they're going to keep the dollar low so that these companies can have cheap exports. So when this happened, all this money started flooding into the dollar. Now they're going to loosen the dollar so these companies can make a lot of money, and they're going to lower the inflation, and they're going to start domestically producing goods, because if they lower the dollar, it means the U.S. can't import the goods from Germany. They have to be produced domestically. So what's going to happen is, and then we have another block that's forming in Asia, and we're going to have these regional blocks like Canada, United States, Mexico. Japan's going to. It's going to be complicated, but Japan's bringing their factories back home. So this era of globalization, these countries are paying their domestic companies to move their factory back to the homeland.
Yeah.
We haven't seen that in 30, 40 years. In the 80s, they paid them to move those factories to China. Now they're paying them to move them back. So we're seeing a new national defense, new economic strategy. And the next phase is they're going to declare – they wanted to have green bonds. They wanted to have a new Green Deal, and that fell apart. What they're going to do, though, it's going to be called something, and it doesn't really matter what the name is. They have 50 million people unemployed. Their workforce is only like 150 million, 120 million working people. So half the people almost are out of the job. So now what they're going to do is they are going to print up $100 trillion in one form or another over 10 or 20 years. And they are going to have to rebuild their economic infrastructure. It's basically they're ending globalism, and they're going to bring in green bonds. They're called green bonds or infrastructure development bonds or infrastructure development bank or Make America Great Again, whatever they call it, COVID-20 bailout. They're going to probably, in my opinion, print up a shitload of money to wipe out the debt and to rebuild the domestic infrastructure, and they're going to devalue the debt. So you're going to see prices going up instead of 10% a year, 15% a year, and we're going to go back into another boom. And this boom, and if I were them, there's some people that are going to go to jail. They're going to purge these people. People who oppose this program, they're going to have to throw in jail. They need to throw. If I was Trump, I would throw these people in jail.
Yeah,
the first day of presidency. And I don't know why he didn't do that. So what I think is a lot of the dirty laundry that you see, like the Trump and the stuff that happened with Biden and the stuff that happened with Jack Abramoff and a lot of the dirt on the Clinton, like the Democratic Party is destroyed. They had a position where they thought they were going to rule the United States forever and bring in these Mexicans and give them the right to vote, and they were going to rule. And then the Mexicans started voting for Trump, and they're like, "Screw you, Mexicans! You voted for the wrong person," and screw the blacks because they voted for the wrong person. The blacks don't vote Democrat. They can, we should have aborted them. Why do we, we should take away their welfare tax because they're blah, 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 blah. They're not happy because they thought they were going to get these people right, and they didn't vote for the right person. And so they're in disarray right now. They're just fighting each other. So there's a whole political party that is getting annihilated, and they're going to have to find out some new platform or new way to be relevant. And what I see happening, there's several things happening at a geopolitical level, military level, like you saw in the background. So they didn't go in the media and say, "Yeah, we built the blocks, come to the United States, and we're building a new we're going to take over North America," right? He basically he didn't say like we're going to build a Fortress America. He didn't say we're going to dominate the earth. We're going to build a space force, and we're going to build the space-based industry, and we're going to kick China's ass, and we're going to, we're going to. They didn't come out in the media and say that, but basically, the biggest problem is you have these corporations in the United States. They turned themselves into monopolies. So first thing they did is they went to Asia. They took the machine they're running in the U.S., destroyed the labor union. They moved it to China. They pay this guy enough money to buy one bowl of rice a day running this machine. So their profits shot through the roof. Incredible profits for 20, 30 years, right? Massive amounts of money that you couldn't even imagine. Then the Chinese copied all the machines. and Chinese companies started running the machines, and then exporting out of China, competing with the U.S. companies. So now globalism wasn't making them as much money as they had before. So what they did was they created monopolies in the United States. They changed the corporate structure, and you had 400 media outlets. Now you have 4. You had 400 ISPs. Now you have Comcast and Time Warner, and then even those want to merge. So they created what's called monopoly capitalism. Instead of 500 banks, 2 banks, 3 banks, 4 banks running the whole country. So they guaranteed monopoly profits to keep the income coming into these companies so that they could have huge. They drove the stock market up 10% a year every year for 20, 30 years, right? And all the foreign money, all the Russian money, all the Iranian money, all the Saudi money flooded into the United States, into the property markets, into the stock market. Now it's at the peak, right? And it can't go up anymore. So it's going to go down. And when it goes down, that money's going to leave. It's going to go poof, and then the bubble's over, and now we have to you have to rebuild the real economy. You can't have the biggest export of the United States be derivatives. You have to rebuild the industrial base because they can't keep the financial bubble going the way that it's been going since the 1980s. And the other thing is, China's industrial GDP, if you look at the U.S., their GDP is actually twice as large as it should be if you remove the financial sector. So they have to rebuild the antibiotics plants, the manufacturing plants, and they have to build new industries that they can own. So space-based industries, robotics, AI, automation. And they have to make it cheap enough that these U.S. companies can export and make money against China with its cheap labor and its subsidies and so on. And that's a really, really hard problem. If I'm an American factory owner, I would move my factory right back to China or Vietnam because it's cheaper. You know, I wouldn't, and it's closer to the population. So in China, all your chemicals are subsidized. Your labor is subsidized. You don't pay taxes the way that you pay them in the United States. You have a train subsidized, transportation subsidized, everything's subsidized. And the United States, and the labor is cheap. And if you're competing in your factories in the U.S., you have all those taxes and regulations and politics and the transport monopoly and telecom monopoly, and you have to pay more in China and the U.S. for health insurance for your worker than what you pay for a full salary total, everything, including taxes for a worker in China. Even in Shanghai or Beijing, I can get a person in those cities for less than the cost of the health insurance for one worker in the United States.
Wow.
And so it's crazy how much they're paying in terms of overhead. And then if your worker lives in San Francisco, you have to pay them enough that they can spend $5,000 a month on rent. So they have to reduce the rent costs. They have to reduce the health insurance costs. And do you think the rent monopoly, these billionaires in San Francisco who own all the property, do you think for making $5,000 a month on rent to these Google employees, do you think they really want the rents to go down? Do you think they'll let anyone do anything that's going to lower the rents to something that people can live at? And the answer is no, they're not. They're not going to let you lower the rents. They're going to throw you in prison if you try to build more apartments. They're going to throw you. They want their property price pumped. They want it pumped. So the first thing that has to happen in the United States for an economic recovery is they have to get rid of the debt. They have to clean up the monopolies and let them die, which they're not going to do. They're going to fight screaming and kicking. They have to get rid of the health insurance monopolies, which I think it's impossible. I have no idea who's going to do that. They're going to get shot. Whoever to do this is going to get shot. They're not going to let that happen. And you have to get rid of the debts. So in the United States, if you took all the lawyers and the bankers and the lobbyists, you threw them in a pit and burned them, you threw them in an oven, you could make America great again overnight. You could, if you had an oven big enough to fit all these people. But if you
burn, it might just feel comfortable.
You're not. Yeah, you're not. Honestly, I've never seen a government in human history, and it's never been done before, where they've gotten rid of these people and successfully turned the country around. It's never happened in human history. So if they're able to do that, it would be the first time in human history. So, but if you really think about it, that's what they need to do: is put up $1 billion to do industrial things, dominate space, robotics, AI, own all the emerging industries, biotech. They have to be 40 years ahead of China, to the point that China is 40 years behind, right?
Yep.
They have to put up $100 trillion for the industrial base. They have to bring the best people into the U.S. across the world, the most intelligent people, the hardest working people. They have to open the borders to the talent, not to the low-level factory workers that are, doing grunt work, not to the, the people in the Middle East or whatever they're importing now, like the cheap labor for the sausage factory, right? They have to eliminate the debt. And then they have to eliminate the cartels that are driving the price up of production in the U.S. And if they want a real economy, and then they have to increase energy inputs and do this and that and some stuff in the background. But to do that would require slaughtering all these special interests. And it would require someone with a plan. And in the United States, they don't have a plan. They have 40 different groups squabbling and fighting with each other and stealing and scamming. anything that they can get. And so they're not. So China's going to sit down. They're going to say, "Oh, how do we deal with this?" They're going to have a meeting. Okay, virus over. Now, what do we do? They're going to come up with some stimulus plan, and then everyone's going to go out and do the plan, right?
Yep.
The U.S. can't do that. If you said we need to lower the rents, we need to get rid of the health insurance cartel, we need to solve diabetes. All these diabetic workers are, if you imagine 80% of your workers having diabetes,
Jeez.
no one in China has diabetes. None of the factory workers in China have diabetes. If 80% of the American workers have diabetes, what does that mean for your factory in America? They put meth in the water in some of the factories in China to get the output up. It's American. And they don't have diabetic people. They go boom, 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 putting stickers on iPhones, right? Billion iPhones a month, boom, 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 right? They don't have this fat obese guy with diabetes, sitting in front of his TV 8 hours a day. So if you want zombie workers that are drugged out of their mind and weigh 400 tons and that they're slow, right? They want the guy on meth, boom, 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 pumping out iPhones, right? So if they want to get industrial production up, can the U.S. do that? Is it possible to get rid of those special interests and get an economic plan that's going to work and fix all these issues? And my honest opinion is that they're making so much money on these problems that they're never going to fix them. I see that it's going to be an uphill battle.
But I think, Synth, then what could happen, given the contradictions and the tensions and the unworkability of this whole setup, there could be a debt jubilee by default, like a major crisis and then the whole thing collapses and then it gets rebuilt, right? No.
I think personally what I've seen.
Just say a little bit about that, and then what I want to do is I want to move on to the secret project.
So I think that one thing you could do is I think that Trump is not powerful enough. He's to get rid of these people. So what's going to happen is what happened at World War I. We're going to have an economic depression. The next 4 years, he's going to do whatever he can to pump up the economy. It's going to be anemic. The stock market isn't going to move much. It's going to, some money is going to flood into gold and financial assets, but the problems are going to keep piling. The next election, they're going to have a socialist. And that socialist is going to piss people off to the point that the next person's Hitler. And then Hitler, or someone like Hitler, or Roosevelt, or someone might come
Roosevelt, yes, not Hitler.
Yeah, Roosevelt, or Hitler, or Mussolini, or Stalin.
No!